I've got to tell you about the time I fell asleep on a motorcycle. That's right, you heard me right. I fell asleep on a motorcycle. Seems impossible, doesn't it? Well, I don't recommend it. Believe me, it scared me to death. It happened back in 1975. We had this Volkswagen van. A 1972 Volkswagen van had the flat Porsche engine in it. It was a great car. My wife took off one day to go to Idaho on a Friday to visit her folks. And while on her way to the folks, she broke down. It sucked a valve, pretty serious breakdown. And it was about 10 miles away from the ranch, and so her dad came and towed her to the ranch. And then that evening, about 5:30 or so, as soon as I got off work, there were no cell phones back then. As soon as I got off work, the phone was ringing, and it was my wife. She says, Tom, the car broke down. You've got to come save me. You've got to come rescue me and do something about this thing. It sounds really bad. And so I thought, okay, I got to go save my wife, rescue her from the broken down car. And so I got some tools together and some clothes together and strapped them all on the back of the motorcycle. Back then I had a Honda motorcycle. It was a 4-cylinder 500cc beast. It was a pretty good road machine. It would really zoom down the road, and I really liked it a lot. And so I loaded some stuff on the back of the motorcycle and had a light meal. And then at 7 p.m. I decided to take off. The weather was good. I decided to take off and go rescue my wife in Idaho. It was a small community near Twin Falls. And so I took off north from Salem on I-5 and got to Portland and headed east on Interstate 85, and I was doing great, just zooming along at 75 miles an hour, enjoying the wind in my face, got bugs on my teeth, and I was just having a great time. Went roaring up the Columbia Gorge. Beautiful to see the gorge on a evening riding a motorcycle. It got darker and darker and darker as I proceeded on. Pretty soon I rode through Pendleton, and then I went up the steep hill on the other side of Pendleton, just roared around all those corners that are windy. Boy, what fun that was. And I got up on top of the hills there, which is the top of the Blue Mountains, and started heading toward La Grande. And I zoomed past La Grande, and it was really getting late now. I don't know exactly what time it was, but probably a little after midnight. And I was zooming along, and I got on that long stretch of road that is between La Grande and Baker City. It's really straight and pretty long ride, and I was zooming along at 70 miles an hour, just really enjoying the trip, looking around and roaring along. And then all of a sudden, without warning, I woke up. I mean, it was just one of those startled moments where you just wake up. You know how sometimes you're reading a book, maybe you're reading a book in bed, and all of a sudden you doze off, and then you wake up and you go, oh, where was I? Or you're driving along in the car, and all of a sudden you wake up and you don't know how long you've been asleep, or you're sitting there in church, you're listening to the sermon, and all of a sudden you wake up. And you don't know how long you've been asleep. Well, that's the way it was. I was riding along on the motorcycle, and all of a sudden I woke up. And I don't know how long I'd been asleep. It might have been for 1 second, or it might have been for a full minute. I don't know. What I do know is the motorcycle kept going straight and true at 75 miles an hour. I still had my hand on the throttle, and I had the automatic throttle set. And all I know is I woke up, and it scared me to death. I just thought, oh my goodness. And so I slowed down immediately, and I pulled over, and I got off the bike, and I started jogging circles around the bike and slapping myself on the face and jumping up and down and doing jumping jacks. And then I got back on the bike, and I roared into, much slower roaring now though, I held it down to about 45, and I roared into Baker City, and I pulled into town, and I found the nearest place that was open. I think it might have been a Denny's, and I went inside and I sat down, and I got myself a couple of cups of coffee and some crackers and whatever else I could scrounge, and just sat there, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and got all rested up. And finally, I was still tired and sleepy, but I was determined to make it to Idaho, so I went back out and got on the motorcycle and took off again, and I finished the trip. And as far as I know, I didn't fall asleep again. You know, it was really good that I didn't fall asleep further down the road, because further down the road, after you pass Baker City, you come to a bunch of places where there's really steep curves, and you pass that big concrete plant there, and you go around these steep curves and along a river. And if I'd have fallen asleep there, I would have crashed for sure, and probably I wouldn't be here telling you this story. But because it was such a nice straight road, the motorcycle just kept tracking straight, even though I was sound asleep. Even though I don't know how long I was sound asleep, it probably wasn't more than 5 or 6 seconds. But I know I was asleep, and I know I woke up, and I know it really put the scare in me, and it's never happened since, not on a motorcycle.